Good morning, Mr. O'Brien, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. What's on your mind?
Well, just basically, the question is the first question about the Tories. They're completely gone kaput, finished. I spoke to your colleague on the phone just 5 minutes ago to say that just apart from my personal feelings, how I feel about it all, factual things, the bookmakers, who at this stage is now quoting prices for the next election, which, well, let's be honest about it. Take the Tories right now. In the United Kingdom, the thing that's waiting, that's looming on the horizon, is a poisonous guy called Nigel Farage with his reform idiot. Have a look. Lee Anderson, Richard Tice, do me a favour. This is bonkers, Keith. This is nonsense.
I was hoping
Mr. O'Brien, I
I'm
respect
trying to
you
calm you down, but I don't think I can. I think I agree with you, actually. But I worry about your blood pressure. I'm not being patronising. Right, I am listening.
Please,
I am. One of the most common criticisms I get on this channel is that I'm too negative about the police. Why don't I show more examples of them doing a good job? Or at least add a disclaimer that not all officers are like this. Here's why. Firstly, I don't get sent videos of the police doing a good job. But even if I did, it's not my duty to upload them. That's the job of police PR departments. Every force has its own YouTube channel filled with carefully curated footage of the police celebrating themselves, pandering to identity politics, and preaching to the public. Meanwhile, the few good apples that remain in the force are equally complicit, covering for colleagues, assisting them, closing ranks and playing the us versus them game that has poisoned British policing for decades. So no, I won't insult my audience with a rhetorical disclaimer of not all cops are like this, because it simply isn't true.
Earlier this week because you had a quarter-final to contest. Obviously, if I'd have made the semi-finals, this wouldn't have been happening. There would have been a problem with it. So, 7-1 down in the morning session, I finish my session, I go back to my room, and all of a sudden I've got to mentally prepare for the evening session. I walk in at 6 o'clock to have my practice before the match in the evening. Who's on the practice table preparing for the next day? Dennis. What a sign of confidence building that was for me. Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Davis, Dennis Taylor, let's play snooker!
You could hear it before you even opened the door. Plastic wheels screeching on pavement, CFAX buzzing on the telly, and the clink of milk bottles at dawn. None of it's here anymore, but if you grew up in Britain in the 80s, every one of these memories is burned into your bones. We dug up 20 things we truly miss from that wild, colourful, unforgettable decade. And warning, some of them might hit you right in the nostalgia. Before smartphones, before PlayStations, there was the ZX Spectrum, a rubber-keyed marvel that turned British living rooms into pixelated battlegrounds. Released in 1982 by Sinclair Research, it wasn't just a computer, it was a rite of passage. Kids learned to code, load games from cassette tapes, and type commands like load, while praying it wouldn't crash halfway through. Cheap, cheerful and unforgettable, mini milk ice creams were a staple of British childhood in the 80s. For just a few pence, you got a creamy, milky treat that somehow felt both simple and perfect. No chocolate coating, no gimmicks, just frozen nostalgia on a stick. They came in strawberry, vanilla and chocolate, and Dabble, racing and sport betting. Every morning in 80s, Britain, you could hear the familiar clink of glass milk bottles as the milkman made his rounds. Left on the doorstep before sunrise, with silver, red or gold foil tops, they were a comforting start to the day. It wasn't just about milk. It was part of the rhythm of life. Even the birds knew when to peck through the foil, and returning the empties felt like a small, satisfying...
Well, it's a very special Daily Tea today because we have Kemi Badenoch in the Daily Tea studio, marking, I should say celebrating, but marking 100 days in office as the opposition leader, the leader of the Conservative Party. We were there.
We were
when
there
you were
on
crowned.
the day it was announced with all the
It means something different.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about reform and Nigel Farage. So today in the Telegraph, we ran a story that former cabinet colleagues of yours, Esther McVeigh, Sir Brandon Lewis, have said that you should work with reform for the local elections or face a calamitous series of results, because obviously you're up against the 2020 Boris Johnson high results, so you've got a really, really tough base to build from, if you can build at all. And without some kind of negotiated pact with reform, what is described as an understanding pact, you're going to be absolutely obliterated in May, and that's just going to add to the thinking that Kemi Badenoch hasn't got it. How do you respond to Esther McVeigh and Sir Brandon Lewis, who say, come on, Kemi, you need to do something different. Politics has changed.
So I would, first of all, respectfully disagree with both of them, but also remind them of where we were a year ago. The Conservative Party is a broad church, and when we had disagreements, what people saw was disunity. We've now got to a place where we are unified. The idea that you just do something with a whole different bunch of people and it's going to be fine is for the birds. Politics just doesn't work like that. There are many people who vote Conservative who, if they think that we're having mergers or pacts or whatever with reform, will go elsewhere. And every county is different. We need to campaign on our local record. People get what they vote for. Conservative councils are the best run councils, best value for money. They don't go bankrupt, the way that so many Labour councils do. Once in a while, yes, but not the sort of thing that you see in Birmingham. If people are not voting Conservative because they want to give us a kicking, or they...
Yeah, Paul Thorpe has gone to Spain. He's gone to Spain for quite some time. He was saying yesterday on his podcast, on a video, that he's no longer going to do any more rallies. He's no longer talking about anything to do with politics. Yeah, but it's like everything, isn't it? It's it's no point in shutting the stables when the horse is bolted. You know what I mean? He's already done what he's done. He's already said what he said. Also, Richard is also saying that he is no longer doing any rallies. He's stopped doing rallies in England. He's doing them now in Ireland. Whatever, is that going to make any difference? I don't know. But it seems strange to me that they just stopped all that after Tommy Robinson lost his appeal. Something was said on that appeal that has made them all shiver. And they're all running. They've had rallies, for kids, for people who've got no money, and this, that, and there's been thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pounds being put into buckets. Where does that money go? No one really knows. They said it goes here, it goes there, but then the Sun newspaper got involved, and the person that had the one on the rally.
I'm probably the only person online who shares every single one of my trades completely for free. I live... BBC license fee unenforceable, says the culture secretary of this government. And it's from the BBC. The irony has no bounds. In 2022, there was a staggering 44,245 prosecutions for TV license fee evasion. What is even more horrific than that is the conviction rate. Because obviously not everybody prosecuted gets convicted, but out of those 40,654 were convicted, either because they actually went to court and they were found guilty, or they pleaded guilty, or the third, which is very dubious to say the least, in fact, Al's got a great video on it, is the single justice procedure, where they ignored the notice to prosecute and therefore they went through the single justice procedure. So they were found guilty in their absence without having made any representations whatsoever. So if 40,654 people were convicted in 2022 alone, which is something around the region of 1,000 a week on current statistics, why is it then that the Culture Secretary, a Member of Parliament, has recently said that the BBC licence fee is unenforceable? Now, this is quite a dangerous statement to make because it's somewhat misleading, but there is a hint of explanation which I'll come back to a little bit later. But first of all, if I could implore you to please subscribe to the channel. About half of you still don't do so. I'll be your beacon of truth. I'll be very grateful for that. So let's take a look at this, shall we? So she has said that no options are off the table. And lots of things, the reason that popped into mind is because there's going to be lots of things that I put on there that are relevant and particularly useful for BBC license stuff. So I'll be putting on template letters, template documents, all sorts of different correspondence that you may fire off. I'm going to build a library on there, all of which are going to be available for members. Because if you've been on top of my videos just recently, I've had all sorts of different issues as a consumer. Now, when I have these issues with those companies, I can't say, "Oi, I'm a barrister, I know what I'm doing." I can't do that, and I don't say that. If they know, or if it's unavoidable because they've seen something on my channel or whatever, then that's unavoidable. But I can't abuse that position, and I won't do so. What I can do is put together letters and templates and, for example, template particulars of claim, we call it. That's when you set out your claim against a company, or defense if you're sued for something. For example, all sorts of things to do with parking charges. There'll be lots of things available on there. But back to TV license. Now, what I think is going to happen is we have a Culture Secretary here, which this 2027 review is going to be within the purview of this government and within the purview of this Culture Secretary. Now, when she says it's unenforceable, I think she means that it's unenforceable in the way that how can they possibly enforce something when they don't have the evidence or can't have the evidence, and it's really difficult, and more people are not paying it, choosing not to pay it. I think it's unfair. Let me know in the comments if you think it's unfair. Just write the word unfair and it will stand out to everybody. It's easier for me to see, to tally that up. In fact, I might do a poll. If I do a poll, I'll link the poll below as well. Vote on the poll.